Have you ever wondered what could make even the most fearsome alien predators hesitate? From the far reaches of the cosmos, there exists a council of apex predators, creatures so terrifying that entire civilizations built myths and rituals around them just to keep their angry attention at bay. For eons, these monstrous beings believed themselves to be at the top of the cosmic food chain. They ruled with ruthless efficiency, deciding which species were fit to be hunted and which were simply not worth the effort. That is, until they set their sights on one peculiar species from a small blue planet. Humans. Our story begins aboard a colossal, roaming fortress that served as the meeting place for the Council of Cosmic Apex Predators, or CCAP for short. In a grand, echoing chamber filled with eerie, glowing relics of long-extinct worlds, the Council gathered for their routine review of potential new hunting grounds. They scanned the galaxy with cold, calculating eyes, always in search of the next easy target. On this particular day, their gaze fell upon Earth. The holographic projection of our planet flickered into view, a tiny, insignificant dot in the vast darkness. Observe the bipeds, rumbled Supreme Overlord Excrethix, his many sensory appendages twitching in contempt as he pointed at the projection. Their bodies are soft, their defenses weak. It's almost as if evolution cut the process short. His words dripped with derision. Even the most fearsome of these cosmic hunters couldn't help but scoff at what they saw on Earth. They compared humans to clumsy creatures who sometimes died from something as silly as eating the wrong plant. "We digest the heart of a neutron star for breakfast," boasted High Admiral Kazath, his blade-like limbs clattering impatiently against the metal floor. The council was confident, until something very strange began to happen. The Predators had sent out their best scouts in sleek, stealthy vessels, each commanded by the galaxy's most lethal reconnaissance specialists. Their orders were simple: study the humans, find their weaknesses, and decide how best to harvest the planet. What they discovered, however, left them baffled. Humans, they found, weren't simply living to survive. Instead, they spent long periods in a state of sleep, a vulnerability that made them an easy target. Yet even this fragility paled in comparison to the peculiar behaviors the scouts recorded. Every day, the aliens watched as humans willingly embraced danger. They scaled towering cliffs with nothing but flimsy ropes, plunged into boiling volcanoes wearing flimsy gear, and even rode the wild, untamed oceans on flimsy boards. One scout's voice crackled through the communication channel, describing scenes that sounded more like daredevil stunts than a calculated survival tactic. "These humans actively seek out risky situations," he reported, his tone edged with disbelief. "They run toward danger as if it's a game or a test." The council's murmurs filled the chamber. How could any creature, designed by evolution to avoid peril at all costs, deliberately choose to expose itself to life-threatening hazards? It was a behavior so alien to the natural order that even the most experienced predator couldn't explain it. Some council members even wondered if these creatures were not truly prey at all, but something else entirely. Their surprise turned to shock when one of the stealth scouts reported an even stranger event. A human had not only spotted one of their hidden vessels, but had chased it down with a recording device in hand. Instead of hiding in terror, the human shouted excitedly about cryptids and the thrill of discovery. The footage, transmitted in shaky images, showed the human boldly advancing toward a creature that could have ended its life in a single swipe. The scout quickly tried to recall his vessel, but the human kept coming back, eager for more encounters. The council fell silent, trying to process the absurdity of it all. Humans didn't behave like any prey they had ever seen. Instead of running away, they acted like curious explorers. They would watch dangerous animals up close, purposely jump off heights that would normally be deadly, and even engage with lethal creatures as if they were part of a grand experiment. One scout even described humans riding on waves and cheering as if it were a sport, a pastime they called surfing. At first, the apex predators considered dismissing Earth as not worth the effort. One member even suggested classifying humans as not worth the fuel expenditure because of their constant need for care, like a pet that required water, oxygen, and a good night's sleep. But then something even stranger happened. A council member pointed out that humans weren't merely weak, they were driven by a relentless hunger for knowledge. This trait, known as deliberate curiosity, seemed to override even their instinct for survival. The predators, whose lives were built on the idea of hunting and subduing their prey, were deeply disturbed. They had always believed that all species naturally sought safety first, only risking their lives when absolutely necessary. But these humans, so fragile and yet so bold, rushed headlong into danger simply to learn something new. This idea was as foreign to the apex predators as water is to fire. In a rare moment of uncertainty, the Supreme Overlord ordered an extended observation period. I want to understand this behavior fully before we decide on our next move, he declared, his many appendages trembling slightly. The predators were not used to being challenged by their prey, and the situation made them uneasy. For the first time in millennia, they began to wonder, what if these humans were not just weak creatures, but something far more dangerous than they appeared? Days turned into weeks as the human behaviors were scrutinized. The predators monitored everything, from the humans' bizarre, thrill-seeking adventures at theme parks to their dangerous experiments with chemicals and extreme sports. One scout even recorded how humans willingly strapped themselves into machines that flung them through the air at unsafe speeds. These actions, while undoubtedly dangerous, were met with shouts of excitement and wild applause from other humans. Instead of the expected terror, they received cheers and calls for more thrills. One particularly memorable incident was when a human researcher, completely undaunted by the sight of a deadly alien creature, recorded a detailed video of its every move. The creature, known as a cax, a warrior built like a walking fortress with an armored exoskeleton and venomous spines, was something that would normally send any prey scurrying for cover. Yet the researcher's reaction was anything but fear. In a voice trembling with both awe and excitement, the human remarked on the creature's unusual features. Its heat-sensitive eyes, its thick limbs that hinted at life and high gravity, and even its unique way of communicating through low, rumbling growls. The cax, trained to expect terror or frantic escape, was taken aback. It had seen nothing like this before. The human's behavior was completely off the script of prey psychology. Instead of being paralyzed by fear, the human was recording every detail, asking questions like a scientist at a new experiment. The alien predator, confused and a bit flustered, tried a series of intimidation displays. It spread its venomous spines and emitted a deep, bone-rattling sound, hoping to scare the human into retreating. But the researcher simply backed away slowly, still pointing the recording device, and said, "I'm unarmed and not a threat. I just want to understand you." This moment would later be recalled by the Supreme Overlord as one of the strangest encounters in his long history. The experiment had been clear. If humans were prey, they would cower in terror. Instead, they acted like eager students at a science fair, captivated by the unknown. It was a twist that no one in the council could have predicted. Following this incident, the apex predators decided to escalate their efforts. They arranged a controlled contact scenario, a sort of cosmic experiment, to see how a human would react when faced directly with one of their elite hunters. The chosen human was a researcher who specialized in studying the natural world, and they were taken aboard a scout vessel in a blink. Once aboard, instead of being sedated as was normal protocol, the human was left to regain consciousness in a habitat carefully designed to mimic a small earth forest. The room was filled with the sights and sounds of nature, an attempt to make the human feel at home. The human awoke, blinking in confusion at the artificial forest. Instead of panicking, they began to inspect the surroundings with a scientist's careful interest, touching the faux tree bark and marveling at the effort that went into creating such a detailed replica of Earth's wilderness. It wasn't long before a cax warrior was ordered into the habitat. This creature was every bit as intimidating as the predators had promised. 3 meters of armored muscle, covered in spikes and bristling with weapons built for killing. As soon as the humans saw the cax, their heart raced. The predators expected a burst of primal terror, a classic case of freeze and flee. But what happened next stunned everyone. The human, still clutching a small recording device that had somehow slipped through the teleportation process, took a cautious step forward instead of backing away. With a mix of trembling, awe, and curiosity, they whispered, "Wow, your armor is incredible. And those sensory organs, they're so unique." The Cax paused, clearly confused by this reaction. It had been raised to expect fear, not fascination. The human's calm, measured approach, even in the face of overwhelming danger, defied everything the predators knew about prey behavior. The creature hesitated and even emitted a low, questioning sound. But instead of seizing the opportunity to attack, the human continued to record and ask questions, stepping back slowly yet deliberately. The apex predators watching this unfold could hardly believe what they were witnessing. A creature that risked its life for the sake of knowledge, not merely survival. Back on the fortress, the Supreme Overlord was visibly agitated. "Return the human to its original position with memory suppression," he commanded sharply, while Matriarch V's gelatinous form rippled with rare concern. In her measured tone, she mused, "We may have miscalculated. This is not a species driven by simple survival instincts. They value knowledge above all else." The order was carried out, and the human was returned to Earth with their memory carefully wiped. But the data had been collected, and the implications were staggering. The apex predators then moved on to a broader plan. Instead of studying just one human, they decided to observe how groups of humans behaved. They selected a bustling university town, a place dedicated to learning and discovery, and deployed a full-scale first contact operation. The plan was simple: reveal themselves, demonstrate their power, and observe the human reaction. In most encounters across the galaxy, such a display of force would have meant immediate submission from the local species. But what happened next turned all expectations on their head. When the alien drop pods landed in the middle of the university's central courtyard during a busy class break, the shock troops emerged in full force. They marched in intimidating formations, their weapons at the ready, their universal translators booming out commands. "You are now under the authority of the Cosmic Council of Apex Predators. Resistance will not be tolerated." The display was meant to strike fear into the hearts of the humans, to remind them of their place in the universe. Yet instead of running away in terror, a group of students stepped forward with recording devices in hand. "Excuse me," one student called out, his voice steady. "I'm working on my dissertation in theoretical xenotechnology. Can I ask you a few questions?" More and more students gathered around, forming a circle and peppering the invaders with questions about their star systems, their technology, and even if they could touch their armor. The shock troops were flustered. Their orders had been to intimidate, but here they were surrounded by curious and excited minds. One of the human speakers, dressed in what looked like a faculty uniform, stepped forward and said calmly, "We're happy to talk, but threatening us isn't the way. We're here to learn, just like you." The situation had taken a bizarre turn. Instead of chaos and submission, the aliens found themselves in the middle of an impromptu academic discussion. The apex predators, who had always seen themselves as rulers of a strict hierarchy, predators above prey, were forced to confront an unsettling truth. These humans weren't following the script. They weren't acting like mindless creatures waiting to be hunted. They were curious, engaged, and surprisingly calm in the face of overwhelming power. Even when the alien shock troops attempted to use heavy artillery and larger drop pods to re-establish dominance, the human response was not one of fear. Instead, they began organizing, setting up perimeters, and preparing to talk. The shock troop commander, desperate to regain control, ordered his troops to deploy command presence in a final, dramatic move. In a flash, the flagship's teleportation system brought the most fearsome of their warriors, the field commander himself, into the courtyard. Towering over everyone, this imposing figure was adorned with trophies from 100 conquered worlds. For a brief moment, the humans gasped, and there was a moment of stunned silence. But then the unexpected happened. The university president, a calm and thoughtful figure, stepped forward with a warm smile and extended a hand in greeting. "Welcome to Earth," the president said. "We're making history together today." It was a moment of sheer disbelief for the alien commander. In all his years of conquest, he had never been welcomed as an honored guest by those he had planned to subdue. Inside the predator's mind, confusion raged. "You do not understand," he hissed, trying to remind everyone of the natural order. "We are the hunters. You are meant to be our prey. But the president simply nodded thoughtfully and replied, "That's one way to see it, but here on Earth, we see things differently. We believe that learning from one another can make us all stronger." In the days that followed, what was supposed to be a show of force turned into an unprecedented exchange of ideas. Instead of using fear and intimidation to control the situation, the apex predators found themselves engaging in long discussions with human scientists, educators, and even students. They talked about everything from technology and biology to art and culture. Slowly, an unexpected shift began to take shape. The predators, creatures who had once only known one thing, domination, started to see value in human curiosity. News of these exchanges spread quickly. The humans, once seen as weak and vulnerable, began to show incredible innovation. Their universities turned into hubs of research and invention, and their technology advanced at a pace that left the Cosmic Council both astonished and a little nervous. Within just a few cycles, the humans had reverse-engineered some of the technology left behind by the invaders. They created new energy weapons, advanced spacecraft, and even established permanent bases on the moon and nearby planets. Their thirst for knowledge was fueling a rapid evolution that the predators had never seen coming. For the apex predators, this was a troubling development. Their entire system of categorizing life in the universe, where they ruled at the top and everyone else was prey, was being challenged. They had encountered a species that was not only brave enough to seek out danger, but clever enough to turn every encounter into a learning experience. In a rare and historic moment, the Supreme Overlord called for an emergency session of the Council. This meeting would decide how to handle the human threat, which was proving to be both unpredictable and, in some ways, impressive. The emergency session, the chief analyst, a being with a multitude of minds working in unison, presented a startling conclusion. "We have identified an unusual trait in humans," the analyst said, pausing dramatically. "They're driven by what we call deliberate curiosity. They don't always act on survival instincts. Instead, they risk their lives simply to learn something new, to discover what is out there." The room fell silent. The idea that a species could choose knowledge over safety was almost too strange to believe. Some predators muttered that no species could survive that long if it acted so recklessly. Yet the analyst explained that this trait had given humans an evolutionary advantage. They had never relied on brute strength or natural weapons. Instead, they used their insatiable desire for discovery to overcome their physical limitations and push the boundaries of what was possible. The debate grew heated. Some council members argued that this trait made humans unpredictable and dangerous. Others wondered if it was possible to use this very curiosity against them, perhaps by redirecting their focus away from conquest and towards something less harmful. In the end, the Supreme Overlord himself admitted that more data was needed. "One specimen cannot represent an entire species," he declared. "We must observe their group behavior in a more natural setting." And so, a new phase of observation began. The predators set up hidden monitoring posts near human communities, quietly tracking their communications and watching as their scientists, students, and everyday citizens engaged in debates, discussions, and research. What they found was astonishing. Instead of hoarding information or keeping it secret as a means of control, the humans freely shared their discoveries. Every breakthrough was communicated quickly and openly, and the pace of their progress accelerated beyond anything the predators had ever anticipated. The once unchallenged order of apex predators began to shake. The Supreme Overlord, whose long, ancient appendages had once struck fear in the hearts of countless species, now felt a deep unease. Their planned invasion of Earth had turned into something entirely different, a grand cultural and scientific exchange that left them both fascinated and worried. For the first time in their history, they were forced to consider that perhaps the line between hunter and prey was not as clear as they had believed. Then came the moment that would change everything. The predators decided to send out an official communication to Earth, a controlled diplomatic channel meant to guide the human curiosity toward peaceful coexistence. When a message was broadcast, it was met not with panic, but with celebration. Humans from every corner of the globe welcomed the aliens with open arms, excited by the possibility of sharing their knowledge and learning from these ancient beings. They called it the Galactic Scientific Symposium, a chance to exchange ideas as equals. In the years that followed, something extraordinary happened. What began as a carefully planned show of force slowly evolved into a unique partnership. Young members of the Predator Council, who had grown up hearing stories of human innovation and bravery, began to see the value in cultural exchanges. Trade agreements were signed, research collaborations were established, and even a formal invitation was extended to humans to join the ranks of the Cosmic Council. A move that once would have been unthinkable. One day, a human delegation, representing the best minds from universities and research centers, arrived at the Council's Grand Hall. They came not as fearful subjects, but as eager collaborators. Their leader, a passionate scholar with a spark in his eye, explained that their goal was to build bridges between species, to learn from each other, and to create a future where knowledge was shared freely across the stars. The apex predators, still grappling with their old ways, were forced to confront the possibility that the universe might be a place where cooperation could flourish alongside conquest. The final twist in this tale came when the predators noticed something even more surprising. Humans have been preparing for this moment for centuries. Their culture was rich with stories and movies about aliens, some portraying them as ruthless monsters, others as potential friends or mentors. The humans had been ready for this contact long before the predators even knew they existed. They had built entire academic fields around the idea of interstellar life and had envisioned a future where knowledge triumphed over fear. In the end, the apex predators reached a decision that would forever change the cosmic order. They created a new classification in the galactic hierarchy: non-predatory apex species. It was a recognition that sometimes strength does not come from sheer physical power, but from the relentless drive to explore, to learn, and to share that knowledge with others. From that day on, whenever the predators encountered a human vessel in space, they would slow down, their sensors carefully scanning for that unmistakable spark. Curiosity untempered by fear. This unexpected turn of events sent ripples throughout the galaxy. The once ironclad rule that predators always dominated their prey was now being questioned. The very trait that made humans seem so vulnerable, their willingness to risk everything for a new discovery, had become their greatest strength. In the cosmic calculus of survival, a species that chose knowledge over terror was either destined to burn out in a brilliant flash or to become absolutely unstoppable. And, as it turned out, humanity was on the path to doing the latter. So, what does this mean for our place in the universe? It means that the future might not belong to the strongest or the fiercest, but to those who dare to learn, to question, and to push beyond the safe limits of their existence. It's a future where curiosity leads to innovation, and where the quest for knowledge can transform even the most dangerous predators into unlikely partners. As the days turned into cycles, the old cosmic order slowly gave way to a new era, one in which the universe was seen not as a battleground of hunters and prey, but as a vast, shared library of endless wonders. The apex predators, with their ancient wisdom and terrifying power, now had to admit that humans might just be the most dangerous creatures of all. Not because they were violent or aggressive, but because they were driven by a passion for discovery that could never be tamed. In the end, the once feared hunters began to wonder, with a mixture of admiration and trepidation. What if the greatest threat in the cosmos isn't the roar of an alien beast, but the soft, determined hum of a human mind, eager to unlock the secrets of the universe? And so, the story of humans and the cosmic apex predators took a surprising turn. A tale of conflict turned into collaboration, of fear transformed into curiosity. It's a story that reminds us that sometimes the qualities we see as weaknesses can become our greatest strengths, and that the drive to learn and explore might just be the key to shaping the future of the entire galaxy. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the heart of the cosmos. Keep that spark of curiosity alive, because in a universe full of mysteries, it's the ones who ask questions who truly change the game.